I was wrestling every day with how I was doing what I was doing and recognizing that there were just key things that needed to change. I didn't even realize what I was missing in my life by not being able to express the feminine part of myself. Welcome to the Live Abundantly podcast, where we talk about how women can reclaim their femininity while also thriving in every aspect of their lives. I'm excited to have Kim here with me today. Kim has joined our team and she is phenomenal. You're going to love getting to know her. And today we just wanted to kind of share our own stories. I had a journey with my femininity in just the most recent, maybe like last 2 or 3 years. Did I even know what that actually meant? Yes. And then I kind of just pitched this idea over to Kim as a friend and just said, hey, I'm wrestling with this, and invited her to kind of go along the journey with me. And here we are today, still really trying to wrap our minds around the fullness of reclaiming femininity, but definitely we've both embraced so much more of that into our lives since we've kind of been wrestling with this. And it's been a fun journey.
It has. It's been kind of crazy because I didn't know what I was stepping into, but I have loved every minute of it. And even now, we're just kind of recycling through some things, and I am learning even more that I thought I had already mastered. So this is great.
I think it may be a lifelong journey. And that's one thing I realized is that in different seasons of my life, from the time I was, a kid to a teenager to a young mom, maybe even, those college years, like we go through so many transitions throughout our lives to now my kids are grown and, it's a different life stage, and femininity looks different in every one of those life stages. And so I don't know that we ever actually fully finish reclaiming femininity because it's going to look different in every season of our lives. And so I think that's one thing to realize too, is that this is not a cookie cutter type thing. It doesn't look the same. We're not like Stepford wives out there that, now I've reclaimed my femininity, it's like, it looks different for every single woman. Yeah. And I love that because you can enjoy and appreciate and celebrate how all the different versions that women will put on display of their femininity, and recognize that it's kind of cool. It's a personal journey. It's going to be unique to every person, but the concepts that are behind this are going to be universal, I think, for women.
100%. And I think for the different stages, I've got grandkids now. So it looks even more different as you go through. And I'm grateful, actually, that it doesn't end because every season just is kind of fun.
Yeah.
So
I'm looking forward to the grandkid phase.
Yeah.
Cannot wait.
Yeah, you're really going to find out all of the ways that you function as a grandma, but you're also going to see it in your kids and your grandkids, and you're going to say, what have I taught them? And sometimes it's not the things we want it to.
I know. I know. It's been really cool because my daughter, who she just recently got married, but she has been going through this with me. And to have, I was the one that raised her, and I only raised her with what I knew. And so you begin to see what you've passed along, and she's phenomenal and amazing. But then to see her have to have her own journey with reclaiming femininity, because I was her mother and I raised her the way that I did with what I knew at the time. And so there's a lot of grace for all of us in this journey. But Kim, I would love for you to just kind of share a little bit about how this, was introduced to you, and like, where were you at your life at that time? What did it look like? And really, why are you so passionate about this now?
Awesome. Well, when I met you, I remember having lunch with you, Carrie, and you said, we're just going to have fun together. And I had no idea what the meaning of that was. So here I am having more fun. But I had gone through a real, just a hard time in my life. And I've had to function at a high level of stress. And I also was taking care of myself. I went through some life changes and was just going. But I thought I really had it together. And I was really managing through it all. And I'm going to do this. And I'm working all the time. Like, I'd work and then I'd go home and I'd work. And And my free time might be with my kids and my grandkids. And it was just kind of getting through every day. And I thought I was just, excelling in what I'm doing. And then you invited me to a group. I had no idea what it was. And I just will remember that very first day. There was a few of us there and you're talking about this, like, what? Wait a minute. I thought I knew all this. I thought I knew everything about femininity. I'm a woman. Why wouldn't I know that? And so as we walked through this journey, it actually changed my life, because what it did is it gave me space to really learn more about myself. And actually it gave me permission to live in my femininity. How did God design me? What is it that I'm all about? And it took a while to figure out even those pieces for me. And so it was so impactful that even now we're going through a second time of just kind of taking another group through. And I found out that, the outward things that we've talked about, which we'll talk about later in all of the podcasts, those were easy to master. It's now some of the inward things that are kind of ingrained in us. And so it's exciting. It's fun. It's been a blast. We had a lot of laughing and a lot of crying. And I'm excited to see what's next.
It was really such a fun experience for me to take that first group through with me. And it was like I was going on this little journey that I felt like was, no one knew from the outside that I was really working through reclaiming femininity, but I was wrestling every day with how I was doing what I was doing and recognizing that there were just key things that needed to change. And, from the outside perspective, I looked like you, like we were doing it all. I think about that movie, I Don't Know How She Does It.
Yes.
With Sarah Jessica Parker.
Movie.
It's such a great movie, and I related to it so much. I know.
So much.
I remember her having like pancake batter in her hair, from cooking breakfast, and you're just trying to make it all happen. And I was at this point in my life, I was a single mom. I was running a nonprofit, that was combating human trafficking. It was a very high stress. Every day was crisis management of some sort. There's always just serious ramifications to the decisions that we were making. I was spending time at that point going back and forth to Iraq, working with women who had been rescued out of ISIS control. And it was still in the height of ISIS. I was there in the middle of a war zone, going into refugee camps,
yes.
and trying to bring trauma care to the women there. And that was honestly easier for me than figuring out how, as a woman, to be vulnerable and to reclaim femininity was like such a foreign concept. And this was a no-brainer to me. To do my job was just a no-brainer. Yeah. And to, do that job and then come home and get my son and, go to basketball practice, go to games. Like I was just doing all the things. And the thing that I realize now looking back is that it's not that we would change what we're doing. It's the how we're doing it.
Exactly.
That has now changed for me. And I feel like so often we are so passionate about our jobs or our careers, and we put so much of our personal value in performance.
Yes.
And the reality is that there was so much of my life that no one else was seeing. They were just seeing what I was able to produce. Mm-hmm. They weren't seeing how there were total aspects of my being that were completely unattended to because I was performing and producing so well. Yes. And as long as you're performing and producing really well, nobody looks under the hood.
Right. Yeah.
So it just goes largely ignored. Yeah. And that's really how I was living. And I didn't know that there was anything wrong with it. It seemed totally normal, and I felt successful. I felt like I was being a successful executive director of a nonprofit, and you
were
doing all the things. and it wasn't until a friend of mine gave me a book, and he said, Carrie, I think you should read this book.
Okay, I just got to interject. How many times do you have a friend give you a book and you're like, oh, sure, I'll read that book.
Right.
You know, like, I need another book. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of busy.
I always
I'm a
love
little
that.
busy.
But you actually read this book.
I did.
Okay.
It was, the book was called The Queen's Code by Alison Armstrong.
I have read The Queen's Code because you told me about that.
Yes. And that book, I started reading that book, and she did such a beautiful job. I highly recommend reading that book. It's a good starting point. But I remember reading that book, and she had really done a great job of characterizing a few key women, characters in the story. And how
And there is a Kim in there.
There is a Kim.
Not really me.
It's true, there is a Kim. But it really, you relate to these different women and their struggle with femininity. And it was like, I could see myself in all of these characters in different ways. And I realized that this was something that I knew about masculine and feminine just as like out there concepts. Yeah. But there was nothing about it that I was personally really considering how it was affecting me on a daily basis.
I think there's so much confusion over it. I feel like, especially today, that it's just been misused or it's been confused. And I think that we all are going around trying to figure it out, thinking we know or creating a version. And I think what you've done is you've broken it down in a way that helps us apply it to our life, but to really look at how are we designed as women. Mm-hmm. And as I said, we kind of get that permission to live that way, where in a world that we've been told not to. And that's the piece I love about it. So yeah.
And this goes along with, again, this time of my life, I'm, working really, really hard. I get this book and I'm kind of wrecked, like, oh gosh, how do I switch gears? And now all of a sudden operating the feminine when everyone's used to me producing and performing in a certain level all the time and being available 24/7 and putting out all the fires and
you're making me tired right now.
Yeah. I mean, it was just a hard way it was a hard shift to figure out how to make. And I do remember at the same time simultaneously, because I was pushing so hard all the time, I was having this internal thought that I did not share outwardly because I didn't want anyone to be concerned or to think there was something wrong with me. I wanted them to just see me continuing to spin all the plates and be impressed with my performance. But internally, I was having this consistent thought on a regular, like weekly basis, which was, do people know when they're going to have a nervous breakdown, or do they just have one? Like, is there a warning sign I should be looking for? And I'm literally Googling at night, just trying to figure out, like, what are the signs that you're going to have a nervous breakdown? Because I feel like I'm getting to that point. And this is what's so crazy is that if you look at where I was functioning and the level of concern I was beginning to have for myself and the threshold of burnout that I was quickly approaching, I had no idea that so much of that was rooted in this concept of the masculine and the feminine. I had no clue.
Well, yeah, I don't think any of us would really know that unless you've really taken the time to learn it.
Yeah. So I think one thing that's also really interesting as we're wrestling with where we are today and how we view femininity and masculinity, I think it's interesting to go back to our family of origin. And like, what was that experience like when it comes to the masculine and feminine? Like, were there any women putting on display a healthy version of femininity around us? Or is that why we ended up having no clue what this was supposed to be? Because there were no examples of that. And I love getting to ask women in our groups this question, like, what did that look like for you as a kid? And, 9 times out of 10, groups of women cannot come up with one example of that.
Yeah. In fact, I think we just end up coming up with actresses and
that's
because they're trying to portray something that's an ideal out there that we don't even know. And so that's what's funny. We don't even know them personally.
We landed on Blake Lively. We decided collectively that Blake Lively was really feminine.
Her persona on the movies, right? Yeah.
That's the best we have.
I think for me, and I think it's been mentioned, there are bits and pieces that come out from other women. there might be a part of a woman that's like, well, that's really, really awesome. And I had very loving women in my family, in my life, and my mom, and I respect them all greatly. But the version of it all, I was kind of a product of a child, parents during that era and the feminine movement and mixed messages that were going on then. And I think I've shared, and there was a time, my dad was just very much he was a little stern at times. And as a little girl, if I would cry, it would be, stop your crying. And so it was learning, I don't show my vulnerability or my emotions. And yet there was this other piece of it of you need to look a certain way. And so it wasn't until later in life that I actually got the opportunity to really just spend time with my dad and really learn about that, and for him to learn about me. And I think that even helped in my journey with my femininity, because growing up, it was a different story. And so, yeah.
I had a rather dysfunctional family, and I love my family. I mean, we love each other well, and we will be there for each other. But we were in every form of dysfunction that you could possibly throw into one family unit. Like, we collected all the cards, and it was just daily chaos. And we didn't know, like, you don't know as a kid that this is not how every other kid is living, except for that, like, I would watch Leave It to Beaver and, Little House on the Prairie. And they seem to really have this awesome situation. But that was just TV to me. So that wasn't, how everyone else was experiencing life. And so I didn't know that it was not normal what I was experiencing on a daily basis.
Right.
And so, we had abuse in the home. We had, suicide attempts and mental hospital situations and addiction and just a collection of things. And there was no sense of safety or stability in my home. I remember never feeling like I could really just be safe.
Yeah.
And I could go to my grandparents and feel like, okay, this feels like I'm safe here, but not in my own home. And so what I saw was women who knew how to survive. And we knew how, at the end of the day, to get ourselves in, in a safe place if we had to. We knew how to run. Wow. Some women were more in my family geared towards fighting. That would be my older sister. Her first attempt was always going to be a fight. But if she couldn't fight, then we ran. Yeah. And we knew how to quickly load up our little car. She was the only one that could drive. My other sister and I weren't old enough yet. But we knew how to grab exactly, our school books, bags, and our clothes and what we needed, and get in the car as fast as we could and get to our grandparents' house. And that was our go-to. Wow. And so as women, we knew that we had to take care of ourselves. We had to. And there wasn't a sense of, I'm going to experience my femininity. That was nowhere on the radar.
Not while you're grabbing the backpack?
No. And, and I always laugh because I played with my sisters every day. I'm so glad I had them to go through all the craziness with. But, we played in the mud. It was just what we did. We had a big, huge mud pile. But they would laugh at me because I would try to wear my Sunday dress to play in the mud, because I still had something that had a desire of this in me. But I still wanted to play in the mud with my sisters. And so I would take that spanking. I knew I was going to get spanked for wearing my Sunday dress in the mud, but it was worth it to me. So I feel like there was always a thread of this in me. It just didn't fit in my context at all. And everyone laughs because, ended up my older sister is currently a truck driver. My younger sister is a prison guard, and I'm, fighting human trafficking. And so we weren't women that were raised in such a way that we were, coddled and upper echelon type women that were getting pedicures. Like, that was not what we were doing.
I think my first pedicure job was in my 30s,
Me too. Me too. Now I love it. But that was how I was raised. It was survival, and it was knowing how to take care of yourself if you had to. And so I think that feeds into our overall wrestling with, is it safe to be feminine, or is it safer to be masculine? And for me, it was safer to be masculine.
Well, yeah, I think that was the way to get things done or live life, or even to get that approval from our I think from my father in some ways, and I had a family line of the women that I had very hospitable, and they loved to cook and have people and all that, and all of those pieces that I'm so grateful for that I learned. But there was just an element of being myself, of what is it? What are the pieces that I can share in who I am? Or really comes back to that vulnerability, coming back to sharing those experiences. So,
And I think the thing that stood out to me the most was a definition that I came across that basically explained that the motive, really what motivates the masculine, they are motivated primarily by accomplishing, by reaching goals, by being productive. And the feminine part of us is actually motivated by experiences. When I saw that, I was like, what in the world? That blew my mind. And then I started thinking about how, if men had never had women, they would be happy to just like live in some tent or hut or something eating out of a can. Like they don't need all this stuff. And it's women that come along and try to create this environment and these experiences. And we want to, if we're going to cook the meal, then we want it to be savored and enjoyed and, and all the things. It's like, but how much richer is life when we allow ourselves to experience it,
So true. And I think, as we talked about, I still have to do all the same things. I'm still having to take care of myself and provide and do all those things, but it's doing it different. It looks different. It feels different. Yeah. It is the experience. I can still do it and enjoy it instead of it's just one more thing I have to get done. Yeah. I have to get it done. Yeah.
That, I think for me has been what has changed my daily life experience the most, is understanding that even these little tiny moments can become an experience that nurtures our whole being. And when you look at just how God created everything, he could have made everything brown. There's no reason for it to have color. Yeah. He could have made all food taste and feel the same with the same temperature. There's no variation of like ice cream and then hot cocoa, it could have just all been the same. We didn't have to have variety. We didn't have to have all the things that make life beautiful and pleasurable. And you think about it, if you're planning like your next vacation, you're looking for somewhere beautiful to experience this. If you're going to invest in it, you want it to be an amazing, pleasurable, beautiful experience. Like nobody's going, I want to find the worst looking,
I want to go stay in a cave.
Yeah, I want to go stay in a cave with a pile of trash outside the door. Like that's not where we're planning our next vacation spot, Yeah. So we as human beings, God made us to appreciate the experiences that he wired into creation. And when we allow ourselves to daily experience those little things, it brings us more alive. And that's what I've been experiencing. I am more alive.
Yes.
Than I think I've ever been.
Yes.
And it's just tapping into this part of myself. So I wanted to share, because we kind of went over this in our group last night, which was so much fun. We had just kind of a list of what we experience sometimes that is more of the masculine experience versus the feminine, to see what we related to the most. So this was kind of fun. I'm going to read a few of these. I have to have my glasses. So if this is resonating with you, if you're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that this is what was missing from my life, please take a second and just subscribe, because we're going to continue to bring more content just like this to help you on your journey. So when we're operating in our masculinity, we tend to be more always on the go. If you're experiencing life like I'm always on the go, got to move, got to go.
Yeah, been there.
Highly independent. Maybe you're not comfortable with expressing a need. You feel like you have to do everything yourself. You hate asking for help. You don't want to be dependent on anyone. You feel drained and exhausted. Maybe you feel guilty doing things just for pleasure.
Yes.
These are signs of operating in our masculine. And that's just a few. Like, we have a whole list. But I wrestled so much early on with, like, this entire list was exactly what I was operating in on a daily basis.
You know, I think there was a really big one as well. And I know we'll talk about this more later, but receiving, being uncomfortable receiving. I think we're so used to giving and giving, and depending on our history, but receiving from somebody is foreign or awkward, and you just don't want to do that. It's uncomfortable. And it shouldn't be, but it is.
Yes. And that's what's so cool about the feminine, is that the feminine is truly hardwired to receive. Like, even our anatomy and our sexuality is built for receiving. Like, we are receivers.
100%.
And yet we struggle to receive when we're operating in our masculine. Maybe you push yourself too hard. And that's something that I think, I almost felt like if I hadn't pushed myself to the point of exhaustion every day, that I didn't accomplish enough that day. I didn't feel like I had done enough if it wasn't all out on the table that day.
Yeah, I would agree. Or having a list and it would have 20 items and I have to get through them all, or I just didn't get enough done.
Yeah, I still am a list maker, but this is what's different about my list now. I make a list every morning still, but I include in that list items and times and moments and experiences that are going to nurture my femininity. And that's how it's different.
And I'm still getting there.
We're a work in progress, which is fine. So this is just a few things that describe when you're operating in your femininity, which is also fun to look at. When you're operating in your feminine, that's when you're being nurturing and compassionate. You're taking care of yourself and you don't feel guilty about it. That's a big one. It's easy for you to express creativity when you're operating in your feminine. You see vulnerability as a strength. That doesn't seem right, right?
No,
When you're operating in masculine, vulnerability is not seen as a strength. That is only when you're operating in the feminine, that vulnerability and that openness and that willingness to risk. And it takes trust to be vulnerable.
Very much.
And so that's where the strength comes from, is that ability to trust in the midst of being open. You're playful. Being playful is a feminine trait.
Love this because I hadn't even ever thought about it. Like, being playful. What does that even mean? But yes.
Yeah. When we are operating in our masculine, we're typically too busy to be playful.
This is a little different than joking, because I've been recently around a lot of guys that's all they do.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. But the playful, you think about with your grandkids.
Yes.
You give yourself, you're not like, I've got to, grandma's got to clean and I've got to get all this stuff done and let me pick up all your toys. But you're willing to be present in that moment. Yeah. That is very feminine, to be fully present in a moment.
Yeah, I even get to play Paw Patrol. We do rescues and I know all the characters. And so that we create these dynamics of, somebody stuck on a dresser and we have to go rescue them. And I have a lot of fun doing that, but awesome. I didn't realize.
They need you, Kim. Yeah. Paw Patrol needs you. Just a couple other things that are feminine is that you care for your home environment. And you're creating order so that there's peace, and you're creating beauty in your home so that you can enjoy it. And I always tell people, like, when we tap into our five senses and we allow ourselves to experience taste and touch and sound and smell, and what's the other one I'm leaving out right now?
Touch, sound, smell.
There's another one. Anyways, hearing. Sight. I love, if I'm going to cook dinner, and everyone in my family knows this, if I'm cooking dinner, I'm going to have music playing. There's going to have to be a whole atmosphere. I enjoy the experience of smelling all the smells as I'm cooking and chopping up the vegetables. And there's just beautiful, vibrant colors. And it's just fun to me to have that whole experience. And I may pour a glass of wine while I'm cooking dinner and just enjoy that. And there's just a whole experience that I'm having before I even present the meal.
And I have experimented with this because I've never been one. Like I said, I had a family that everybody loved to cook. In fact, we had a Thanksgiving dinner once. My kids were little, and I maybe had a tendency to cook a lot of similar things before. And my daughter was little, and she's looking at her plate, and she goes, "Mommy, what is this white stuff?" And it was mashed potatoes. And my grandmother was so mad at me that I had never made mashed potatoes before. But so I'm trying to experiment more with food.
What is this?
But I've tried turning on, like I was making Italian food and turning on Italian music. It was a blast. I was, even by myself cooking in the kitchen, having a blast, singing, along. So,
and I literally, just 10 years ago, my goal was to find the 15-minute or less recipes that were still somewhat healthy to be able to cook. Because that's what I had. I had 15 minutes. But this is the reality. I can still cook a 15-minute meal.
Yes.
But in that 15 minutes, I can enjoy the heck out of the experience.
Exactly.
And be present and savor it. And so again, it's not changing what we're doing. It's changing how we're doing it that allows us to nurture that feminine part of ourselves. So, I'm just excited to be on this journey and to continue to just keep reclaiming more and more of this. And one thing we've realized in just playing around with this for the last few years for me is that it can be slippery at times, where it is so easy for me to slip right back into the masculine. It's super easy because it's what I have operated in I'll be 49 next month, for 7 years of my life. That's what I knew. And so it's still like at moments I have to go, oh, wait a minute. I recognize that I'm operating in the masculine and I want to stop and switch gears and be able to experience this in the feminine. And so it takes work to be able to do it, but it's so much fun. That's what I've loved about this. It's just fun.
It is. And actually, we've been having so much fun. It's not like, oh, darn, getting mad at myself. It's really kind of laughing at myself. I do fall back into it. I think that there is one thing that is pointed out on here. I don't know that you said this, but being present in the moment. And I think there's something about that statement that is trying to get you to remember, oh, wait, be present. Like you said, whip up a meal in 15 minutes, but be present during it. Have fun, enjoy it.
Yeah.
Take that time to be understanding what you're doing and seeing that. And that's one of the first things that goes for me is the being present, because then I get busy and I just have to get things done and everything else around me doesn't matter. And it is a challenge. Yeah. If I'm working from home, I think there was one day I was like, oh yeah, I should get dressed. But it's just learning. I think the best part is we catch ourselves and we're just aware of it now. And we're still getting all the things done, but it's just been that living abundantly is such a great title because it really does give you more abundant life. Yeah. And that's the part I love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really my goal and my mission right now to invite as many women as possible on this journey. And it doesn't matter what stage of life you're in. I really think that whatever stage you're in right now, this is going to be applicable. And I think that in really just a week's time, if you really begin to allow yourself to embrace this part of you, in just a week's time, you're going to start feeling different about your life.
Oh, for sure.
It's not like, okay, you got to do this for 90 days before you see results. Like, it's not that type of thing. It's like, it's already in you. Yes. We're not having to get something external and then try to apply it to us. It's already in us.
It opens up something, and it almost is cascading. So starting out, and you can kind of see what's around you, or you can make your home how you like it. And I think you had mentioned once it was about creating the life you want, the experiences you want. You don't have to live, well, I have to be this way. It is in us. And then it just starts to bubble out. And so it becomes more and more, and it's not just one thing. And then you learn something else new, and it's just a continuing process. Yeah. And I kind of don't want it to end because I'm kind of enjoying every bit of it. So
I really am having more fun than I've ever had in my whole life. And it truly goes back to being attributed to this journey specifically of reclaiming femininity. So, we're going to keep diving into this topic in each of these episodes that we're going to do. And the goal is to really break it down into what does it mean for me on a daily basis?
Yeah.
In every aspect of my life to experience things from the feminine, and how does that really help me to live more abundantly? So I'm excited to go on this journey with whoever joins us. And thanks for hanging out with me, Kim.
Thanks. It was
been fun. And we look forward to the next time. In the meantime, live abundantly, and we'll talk to you next time.